Off mute. Welcome back. This is the O-House repair training, and right now we are working on the mini vortexer. So again, I apologize for some repeat information, but I am Nathaniel Pfeiffer. I am a product manager, product design engineer here, and basically what we're trying to do today is show you how to disassemble, reassemble, and repair the mini vortexer product line. This is to be used in conjunction with your service manual that is uploaded to DMX. It's not meant to be a standalone repair training. So for any questions you have, first refer to your service manual, then there's contact information at the end, and we're perfectly willing to help. So if you can't find it in the service manual, please come to us. So some safety precautions before we start. Again, only connect to the correct voltage, the correct power source. This must be grounded. And as you're repairing, do it in laboratory conditions. So a sturdy work surface, a clean, non-humid, temperature-controlled environment is what we're looking for. As always, we're going to use ESD protection on any time we're working around electronic components. So just like the mini stirrer that we talked about, this calibration is done if the unit is either going too fast or too slow. There is a troubleshooting guide in your service manual, so refer to that. But this is a fairly straightforward calibration. Some of the tools needed, very similar to what we used. We basically need a 12 inch-pound torque driver, a Phillips head screwdriver. As I go through this, I'm using hand tools, but refer to the specific torques that are in your manual. One thing I didn't say on the hot plate stirrer that's a little bit important is for both these units, as you before you go into the calibration, there is a burn-in time or a time where you run the unit before starting the calibration. That was all done before this this presentation. So again, refer to your service manuals for the time that you have the unit running. Again, as with the mini hot plate, mini stirrers, the voltage regulation can be a little bit touchy. So make sure that you are running the unit from a specified voltage source. In this case, this is a 120 volt unit, and it's running at 60 hertz. So the other thing we'll need, the difference between this one, the tools needed for this one, and the hot plate stirrer, we'll need a very small flathead screwdriver. Let's see if you could see that. Okay, small flathead screwdriver, and that's to remove the power switch here. Before starting on any of the units, check it for scratches, check it for any aesthetic issues, look it over. Always a good idea to take pictures of it before you start the repair. Document how the customer brought it back to you. All right, we're going to unplug this unit. We are going to put on the ESD protection. As I put on this ESD protection, note that I am getting the metal contact here in contact with my skin. It's not over clothing. It's not over my gloves. It's in contact with my skin. Some other things we'll need. This will have a slight repair to these aesthetic red feet that are not on the hot plate stirrer. If one of these does pop off, we will be using Loctite 411 to adhere it back on. This is an instant adhesive. But primarily, this is very similar to what we did with the hot plate stirrer. All right, we're going to disassemble the unit. To do that, we're going to flip it up. And again, there's 4 screws on this unit that we remove. Evan, can you hand me the drill? Make this go a little quicker. For disassembly, a drill can be used. For assembly, I would recommend using the specified torque driver. There, the bottom housing pops right off. Save the screws. They will be needed later. Move that off to the side. And you can see the wire routing. So as you're doing the quality check, the first thing you do after you open really any of these units is look at the wiring. Make sure there's nothing coming into contact with the motor, that there's no tears or breaks in any of the insulation, and that all the wire routing is correct in the unit, that all the wire ties are in place. That's a fairly important thing to do on every unit that we open up, look at, and calibrate before moving on. Also, never hurts to take a picture of this and document it. All right. So moving on, I chose the 120 volt on this unit because it has a little idiosyncrasy in that you have to pop this switch out before doing the calibration. So you can't get the trim pot tool into the switch before you pop out this switch. So to do that, we're going to put some downward pressure on the switch, and there are 4 tabs on the sides here. Let's see if we can zoom in on that. There we go. 4 tabs on the side. We're going to put some downward pressure on them, and then we're going to push them in one at a time. As you put the downward pressure on it, make sure that you are not bending any of these connectors. You want to put the pressure on outside of the connectors. Get the small flathead screwdriver down in between the housing and those tabs. Tabs pop in and the switch pops out. So that's one side. I'll do the other side here. There we go. And the switch pops out completely. There's no need to disconnect anything. We just need the switch out of the way on this unit. Again, the trim pot is in a slightly different configuration on the 230 volt unit, so this doesn't need to be done. You just need to adjust, put the trim pot tool in and adjust it. All right. So next we're going to put this unit kind of on its back. Plug the unit in. So very much like the hot plate stirrer, this has a speed control. As you turn it up, it turns on. Unlike the hot plate stirrer, it has this selector switch here. Over to the left, it's in touch mode. In touch mode, it means that when you have the speed on and you press down on the cup head, it activates a switch and turns on. In on mode, it's automatically on. So right now we're going to put it into touch mode. Notice that as I have this plugged in, I'm being very careful not to put my hands into the unit. All right, so to do configuration, we're going to turn the unit to the number 10 position, turn it to touch mode, and we're just going to make sure that it turns on when we hit that switch. Turns on and off as we hit that switch. So the next we're going to set the switch to the on position, and we're going to let this unit run for about 30 minutes. As I said, I did this before we had the presentation. We're going to let the unit cool. And then we'll go into the actual calibration. So this is a cup head. This just pops on and off. There is a flat in there. I don't know whether hopefully it'll show that. Doesn't look like it's showing it, but there's a flat on the cup head that aligns with the flat on shaft here. That just pops down and on. Have the unit in the standby position so it's not running. Next, we're going to put a piece of reflective tape onto that cup head. And forgive me, this is not as easy to do with gloves on, so I'm going to take the glove off. And take the backing off the reflective tape. All right. That gets applied right here on the cup head. And that's going to allow our meter to pick it up. Put a new glove on. As we're working on the units, it's pretty important to have gloves on so that we don't get any dirt or fingerprints on the unit. It's also important to clean them before they go back out. The glove doesn't want to go on. Okay. So we've attached the cup head. We have attached the reflective tape to it. Next, we're going to go right into the trim pot. And I don't know whether you'll be able to see it on this one. You saw it on the hot plate stirrer. But we'll go in between these two fast-on connectors and place the flat of the trim pot tool into the slot in the rheostat. We're going to turn it down to 1. And we're going to calibrate it to 500 RPM, plus or minus 150 RPM, again, using the phototachometer. As you put this down, make sure that the unit is not resting directly on the switch, as that can actually slow the motor a bit. So we're taking it off to the side. Turning the unit on. Just like before, we might need to jump start it. This particular unit has not been calibrated, but these units are much easier, much less touchy than the hot plate stirrers to calibrate. So we're going to start with this a little bit faster. Note that this, where the stir bar had 2 revolutions, this does not. So what you see on the phototachometer is what you is the speed that it's actually going. So we're going to slow it down. And we're looking to get right at 500 RPM. Sometimes the tool pops out. But you really have a lot more control over this speed than you do over the hot plate stirrer. That's about 1,000. I'm going to turn this down. It's about 800. Turn it down a little bit. About 640. More. Almost. And there it did stop, so we're going to take it back up and turn it down. It's about 400. I'm going to turn it up. It's the touch. $417. A little bit faster. About 640. Back down a little bit. And that's right at about 485. So we are well within range there. Turn it off. Okay, next we're going to move the unit up to the 5 position. Turn it on. Make sure it increases. Here it should be 1250 RPM plus or minus 250 RPM. Yeah, so that's 1223, right near what we want it. Then up to position 10. And we should be at 3000 RPM plus or minus 500. So this is right at between 3100 and 3300 RPM. I don't know whether you can see that on here. Let's see. You see can't actually see the value, but it was right fluctuating between 3100 and 3300 RPM, which is right in range. Okay, make sure you turn that on and off several times. I'm going to bring this pad up so that we don't get that vibration on the counter. And again, you want to turn it down to position 5, turn it down to 1. Do that several times to make sure that it's consistently adjusting speed. Back up to 5, back up to 10, back down to 5, back down to 1. If it ever stops at 1, you're going to recalibrate it. All right, we'll turn that off. Unplug it. And we're going to reassemble the unit. Again, very simple. The big thing is making sure that all the wire routing is correct inside before reassembling the base. Pop the base back on. Attach the 4 screws. I'm not using it right now, but this is Loctite 248 that's used on these screws. And you will want to also use the proper torque specified in your manual. The Loctite 248 just stops the screws from vibrating back out. We use Loctite on most of our units, particularly any unit like this that vibrates significantly. Once you're reassembled, once the unit is reassembled, you then want to go back and do all your testing again to make sure that it passes. Once you have put in the screws, just pop the switch back in and you're ready to go. And it's the same round of tests for your final check. There's one more thing on this unit that we want to look at, and that's reattaching these aesthetic red feet. So I'm going to get something under this one. I pried this off before and just lightly reattached it. I believe it's this one. Yeah. I'm going to pop this off. So please note that the unit can run. These feet do not affect function. The unit can run without them. Oh, this was the one that I had popped off before. Maybe it's this one. There, that's the one. Sorry about that. The unit can run just fine without them. These are simply aesthetic. So if it does come off and break, it's not going to affect the function of the unit. But if you do need to do a repair, it's real easy. You just take some Loctite 411. There is a little tab on the bottom of this. Let's see if I can get it to the camera to focus. Little tab right here on the bottom of this that goes into a slot here. Right there on the bottom of the unit. If that tab is broken off, again, it's not going to affect anything. That's just for positioning. Make sure that you position it correctly for aesthetic reasons, and it'll be fine. There are Loctite applicators that are shown. The important thing is that you don't put so much on that it's going to squeeze out. So we're just putting little dots of the Loctite all the way around. And it's about 11 dots of Loctite. Put the foot back on, pop it into place. Loctite 411 takes about 30 seconds to set and about 24 hours to come to full strength. As you pop it back together, make sure that it's correctly positioned and that no Loctite is coming out and getting on the unit. As the Loctite dries, it does get a little whitish haze to it. I'll show you what happens. I'm not sure, hopefully you'll be able to see this, but if the Loctite comes out and is left on the red, you can see that whitish haze around the edge. That's a blemish that we don't really want our customers to necessarily see. So make sure that you wipe and clean any Loctite that comes out off the unit. All right, so that is our mini vortexer repair training. We've basically gone through the calibration. There is a pre-pack procedure that you can do, but it's very simple, very much like what we've seen. So you can get that directly from the service manual. And as with any other unit, we're going to do a high pot test every time we open and close the unit to make sure that there is no electrical hazard to the user. Are there any questions? We do have a customer service number, and if you do contact our customer service, we call it our customer happiness representative, she will put you in touch with whichever one of the team will best serve you for that particular product line. Are there any questions on this unit? All right, we're going to take another 10-minute break and come back to you with another unit.